Welcome to 2X eCommerce, the e-commerce marketing growth podcast where you ask questions and I, Kunle, answers them. Also hear from proven marketing growth experts who are number one or number two in specialist areas of online retail marketing. So if you work in or own an online retail business, listen in, get involved, join me, and let's put some fuel to skyrocket your e-commerce growth.
So an inbound marketing strategist, how do you beat Amazon?
Natural search and our search engine position is critical to the customer flow through the website.
I personally would not have an account process interrupt checkout flow at all.
My favorite customer lifetime value calculation is an easy one. It's your average order value times that purchase frequency that we just talked about times your customer lifespan.
I'm Kunle Campbell. Let's get rolling. But you get the gist. You're going to have a long list of 9 things you should be doing in 2020. That being said, you may already be doing some. So, however this goes, there'll be a few things you need to start to take action on top of. Okay, let's start out with the first tip, which is the growth triad. That's why I call it the growth triad. And every time I diagnose an issue with brands I work with, whether you're looking at metrics on a daily basis, maybe you're expecting a particular sales, you're expecting to hit a particular sales number, or whether you're looking at it more long term or more mid-term, which would be maybe your weekly or your monthly performance, or if you're looking more long term, your quarterly and your annual performance. There are 3 things you need to look at, and 3 things that give you control, 3 things that give you a picture, 3 metrics that give you a picture of exactly what to tweak and where it's going on. It's almost like a self-diagnosis before you dig deeper, before you know what kind of experts you want to hire, or before you try and figure out what kind of expertise you need to get things going, to fix things essentially. So the first is, the triad basically is AOV, which is average order value. Second is conversion rate, and the third is traffic. Now you want to split out traffic by returning and new. Let me give you an example. If you go into your analytics, and I'm not talking about Google Analytics here, I'll talk about your more e-commerce analytics platform. Whether you're using glue.io or you're using Shopify or even Magento, you are able to dig into the reports fairly quickly and understand what your average order value is. If one thing you could transpose your average order value against is the number of sales. So if, for instance, today we had 500 sales come in, and yesterday we had 300 sales come in, but we had a better sales day, yesterday, then it's very likely that average order value actually was better today, and you need to dig into your reports to see exactly what products actually sold at that high value, and see if there's a trend. Maybe you started to send whether like traffic sources were better, whether you started to rank very highly for a particular keyword, which is driving a lot of traffic through and hitting that particular high AOV page, whether it's just something fundamentally that has changed, essentially like a trend. You're able to kind of look at it from that perspective. So AOV is very important. The second is your conversion rate. You guys all know conversion rates, but you really want to look at conversion rates from a unique visitor standpoint, from a returning visitor standpoint, and also from a standpoint of first-time customers. So when you look at first-time customers, your conversion rates might differ from returning customers. Another perspective you must look at, especially when you're trying to diagnose user experience, is conversion rates on devices. How do desktop stack up against mobile? And to be honest, there's no fast rule. I've seen situations in which 80% of sales have come from mobile and conversion rates are like 3%. I've seen situations whereby a minuscule 10% of transactions have come from mobile, and their conversion rates on mobile are really, really poor, but they're still doing well. Their mobile experience is high. It's just people want to settle on their desktops or a tablet to actually make the purchase in that scenario. But it's very important to benchmark these figures in a spreadsheet to kind of understand how all of these sort of interrelate with to your sales, to your overall sales figures. The third thing you really want to look at is traffic. Now, everybody knows or everybody tracks traffic, but how much of your traffic is returning, how much of your traffic is new, and what's happening with your returning versus your new, especially if you're doing email capture with your fresh traffic. What's the conversion rate of that, of the email capture from your new traffic, from your fresh traffic, and are they actually even making sales off the back of their first visit? You really want to kind of get those metrics, and you chart them out on a spreadsheet, and use a tool like Supermetrics to kind of feed in. Use Glue. Glue is really, really good also. Glue, it's GLEW.io. So your growth triad is super important. It's AOV, conversion rate, and traffic. It's super, super important, and there are many ways to cut and slice this. Now, the second thing you need to be doing, if you're not doing already, is push notifications. Push notifications are extremely important, especially if you are you're getting a lot of desktop traffic. Essentially, it would interrupt sessions in your subscribers, your push notification subscribers' browsers, and allow you to send them a brief message. So if you're running a sale, for instance, there's no perfect tool to remind them, along with all of the messaging channels you're using, about your sale. Sale just started, sale's going to end, it's this much off. It's super important. If you have shipping deadlines, if you have alerts, do not abuse it, but it is a sharp tool. It's a sharp tool in your arsenal, which, if used properly, it can be very dangerous. And I'm not saying to you, but to your competitors. You could use it to your advantage to actually scrape additional sales, off the back of specific events. I'd always say use your notifications to when you have events, rather than just using it willy-nilly. It's super important. The third thing on your to-do list, with some of you have already started from conversations I've had with you, is SMS. Klaviyo now have an SMS. Now have SMS support. We've had 2 other SMS platforms come on the show. You can go back to about 2 other episodes in season 4, I believe. Towards the end, there are a few, and basically you can now create flows with SMS. It's wild west now in the world of SMS, I have to say, but it is generating sales. If you use it in tangent with email and push notifications, you will be onto something, for sure. You will you will essentially you will be onto something, and you will get into people's mobile phones uninterrupted. They will get alerts. Most people do not turn off alerts for SMS. Do not abuse the privilege. Use it for your standard flows. So shopping cart abandonment, welcome series. You could use it for broadcast, and you could use it for one-time offers, and you could use segments. So you could use segments to and push in, and then send specific messages to those segments. Another very important thing you must do in relation to SMS in 2020, actually I should have said this first, is you should and must start to get an SMS SMS capture, not email capture, SMS capture pop-up on your stores. Hugely important right now. If you can get an SMS, capture form. Klaviyo does it natively, and most other platforms will do it natively. You could use Just Uno if you prefer, but you need to start collecting mobile phone numbers if you haven't already, or cell numbers if you haven't already, so you can continue. You could kick off your SMS strategy, which will work in tangent with your email strategy, and make sure it's automated and it's very segment driven, so make use of segmentation. My fourth point, or the fourth to do in your list, is unify your messaging strategy. So synergize it. A guest came on the show and was talking about how you do not send the exact same message across platforms. Let me give you an example. You have a sale coming up, or you have a flash sale coming up this weekend. Say today's a Tuesday, and you need to, it's 20% off site-wide, only happening Friday. You send an email to your most engaged customers, because those are the guys or people who've opened your email in the last 3 months. You send it out to them. That's email number one. You wait for 6 hours, right? And then on the same platform like Klaviyo, you then send them SMS. You send them an SMS saying, "Did you get our email? Our sale will kick off this Friday. Let us know. We're excited as you." And then you put an urgency and scarcity, message on there. And then with your notifications, you wait closer to Friday, so Thursday, tomorrow, sales coming, or when you're about to kick start the sale. So at Friday midnight, when it just kick starts, you set up your notification to alert their browsers at that point in time, and then you send an email. You send an email, obviously, which would be quite general, and then you send an SMS which says, "Did you, don't miss this. We sent you an email already. If you haven't, check your inbox, and we have our unique code, or just use this code." So it's kind of like talking to a friend. So if you're talking to a friend and you sent them an email about something, and you say, "Hey, would you like to join me for this road trip?" and you didn't get a response, then you will send them an SMS and say, or a WhatsApp message and say, "Hey, did you not get my message? Or are you interested in this?" So you really want to create a unified messaging strategy that connects, rather than just sending a singular message. Hope that made sense. Point number 5 is reduce the amount you're discounting. This is a huge topic. We're told left, right, center to give discounts. Give 20% off, give a welcome discount. And the trouble with that is you train your customers to look out for the discounts. Have you ever been to a website? I do this a lot, where when you get to the checkout page, you've added items to your cart, you've seen the cart summary, you're in checkout, and then there's this big apply voucher button on there, and then you stop your browser session and you go online and you start looking for vouchers. Now, if you have a voucher strategy, it cuts on your margins. It trains people, it devalues your brand, that you're a discounter, and it trains your customers to always look for a bargain, which is something you don't want them to always look for. You need to retain your brand. There are other ways to build in trust and build in loyalty than just discounting. You can discount to specific people who've demonstrated that they love you by spending quite a lot, or engaging with you at a very deep level. But giving just broadcast discounts does not cut it. You have to really look at your strategy. So if you're giving 20% off or 30% off willy-nilly, especially this welcome email discounts, some of you are testing it, but what value, if you're selling something for $100 or £100, and with your discount, people are getting it for 70 and 80. What is the real true value of what you're selling? What's a perception to the customer if they know that they can get that same item for $50, $70 if they're willing to wait or search? So really figure out more creative ways to create brand value than giving that discount. So one area or areas you could add is what we call value stacking. Areas you could value stack is adding information products with it, getting them to be members of the community. So I remember Live Glam, where they were pushing a lot of content initially and not making that much sales, and what they did is they flipped their strategy on its head, and they're like, okay, we're going to be very transactional, and then when you purchase, you become a member of our cosmetics or our makeup college or makeup school, and that is like an additional stack in the whole value chain. Access to events, you could make experiential. If you reside only online, you could tell them that they could become members of your community off the back of that. Put a lot of reviews up front. Invest more on your content to show how different you are. It's really important to really detach from being just a discount brand. I remember one of the first businesses, e-commerce businesses, I was advising for. They were selling tiles. They're called Tile Mountain, and I had conversations. Why don't we give discounts? And they were very adamant that they were not giving discounts. That prices are already low as it is, and they've stuck with that strategy, which I 100% agree with. The only time when you give discounts, or when you could potentially give discounts, of which they didn't, which I don't agree with, is at specific events. You could still run your flash sales, to show your customers that you can. Now, here's the thing, right? If you sell products that have very low frequency to them, so think about like selling a car, for instance. When I bought my car, I just bought a car. I'm not going to think about buying another car till 2, 3, 4, 5 years, down the line. Or a carpet for your house. You're not going to think about buying carpets. Once you've bought your carpet, you're not going to buy a carpet till 3, 4 years or till you move. If you're buying sofas, the same thing. So if you're selling stuff like that, that's always looking at this. Stick to your guns and just show how different you are, especially when there's differentiation in what you're selling. Now, if what you're selling essentially doesn't have much differentiation, then that's when you get nervous and you try and give a discount or give that perceived value like they're getting a discount. Okay, now if you're replenishable, you could offer a loyalty program that rewards shoppers the more they shop with you. That makes more sense. Even if you're not a replenishable, but if you sell products that people would usually buy 3 or maybe 4 times a year, then there's no point giving a blanket discount. Offer more value, and as people patronize you, as they hit certain total order values within a certain cohort, then you could say, okay, you've hit this tier and this is what you'll be rewarded for. Loyalty programs work better than discounts. So that's my take. So figure out more creative ways of rather than discounts. Point number 6 is drive a lot of focus on brand. This connects with my point number 5, which is about discounting. So focus on your brand. How can you focus on your brand? Well, if you haven't already, start framing and telling your brand stories. And one of the best ways to frame and tell your brand stories is through a video. Tell your brand stories. Tell your brand story or stories because you have to impact feeling. I've been doing a lot of brain. I've been reading a lot around how the brain works, and we feel before we think. So a lot of the time, when we feel something, our prefrontal cortex then figures out how to rationalize that feeling. So if I feel I need a Ferrari, right, and I have the cash to buy a Ferrari, then my prefrontal cortex, which is my big brain, my thinking brain, starts to say, okay, how are we going to? I deserve a Ferrari because I like fast cars. It goes 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. So I start to rationalize, and I then want to buy it. So when I talk about your story, think about how, when you're speaking, when you're communicating, when you're writing your ads, when you're putting your emails together, when you have the opportunity to speak in front of an audience, be quite emotive from a storytelling standpoint to deliver essentially positive emotions that link up to your brand. So people, when they think about your brand, or when they think about the noun or the verb associated with your brand, they think about you, and they have those emotions, those emotions that relate to who you are. Excuse me. Now, also leave visual and audio visual footprints. What do I mean by visual and audio visual footprints? Visuals are photographs. Audio visual is video. Video, obviously every video would have sound. Leave those footprints. They're more impactful. They're almost an one-to-one experience. So essentially what I'm trying to say is put out more video, and invest and double down in video if you're really serious about brand. The other point I wanted to make around brand is nurturing a community. Start to build out a community. One brand I love what they've done is called Mixtiles, Mixtiles. They sell frames, photo frames. Photo frames are a boring category, but these guys are killing it in the photo frame industry. They're absolutely killing it. From their Facebook ad strategy, if you're to reverse engineer their funnel hack, their Facebook ads strategy, fantastic. They executed it quite well in December. I've saved a few of their ads. Not only that, when they then get their customers, of which I'm a customer. They get their customer to join their Facebook group, and a lot of people are just sharing their purchases. So start to build. It might seem like you're talking to nobody at the beginning of a Facebook group, but it will grow eventually. Even if it's not Facebook, start to create communities. There are other avenues to create communities. You need to bring customers together. But to be honest, Facebook groups offers the best tools at the moment for community building. Right this moment, there are hardly any other tools that deliver the level of engagement Facebook groups has to offer. Now, think about this. What emotions does your brand actually evoke? Really think hard about it. What emotions does my brand evoke, and how are we ensuring that we drive the emotions we intend our brand to evoke. Now, one thing to do is you could subtly create surveys and get that answer questioned by your customers. The importance of surveys, I cannot emphasize enough the importance of surveys. Surveys are super important, and you really want to get surveys out to understand how your customers feel. Now, if you have any questions on how to frame a survey to get the emotional state of your brand in the minds of your customers, I will create a new podcast for that to teach you how to do that, what questions you should put in those surveys. Finally, influencers, utilize influencers. People listen to influencers in specific niches. we all love to have gods. That's just human nature. We love to look up to heroes. We have hero figures, whether dead or alive. Every niche has, a figure, has a figure that controls a significant number of people, group of people, and you want to relate with them, especially if they're aligned with yourselves. Now, point number 7 is sell internationally. So this is season 5 of the 2x eCommerce podcast show. We will be doing a lot of international coverage, international commerce or cross-border coverage. I did allude to this fact in episode 1, but this is not about the show, it's about you. It's just the opportunity you have when you go international. Now, there are many steps to going international. One step to going international is just having multi-currency options on your website, putting up in an app, and then the app auto converts, in real time based on IP address. That's one point, or one way. The other way of doing it, obviously, would be to create in specific geo pages. So you could have a Europe page, for instance, that just has Europe's website, that just has everything in that's localized. That's more work, and if you're not doing 8 figures, it's no point. But if you're at the 7-figure range, you could get away with 2 sites. You could get away with a single site that does a multi-currency offer. I've seen $10 million companies do that, where if you're in England, just the currency changes. And unfortunately, if you're in Japan, you have to be able to read English or use Google Translate to actually go through the checkout experience. But it's not too bad. Drive traffic through. So run your Facebook ads to specific geos. Use the regional groupings. There's EEC, there's EEA, there's a NAFTA, which is North American Free Trade Association. There's the Asian, which is more Southeast Asian, mainly Asian countries. You could test various trade groups. There's targeting at that level in Facebook, or you go individual countries. So sell internationally. Number 8, know your customers even more. Carry out surveys, which is what I said earlier, but surveys are super important. I cannot emphasize that enough. Run surveys, twice a year, make it a given, and then you can run what I call micro surveys. So if you have a segment of very high value customers, you could survey just those customers. You could use Klaviyo to identify your high value customers and then send them a survey. Super important, especially if you're trying to get them, if you're trying to improve their loyalty program, if you're trying to get them to be more engaged, to feel more special. You can get what they feel, what their experience is, and use that to improve your brand. Finally, drive multi-channel selling. There's something called headless commerce. I don't know whether you've heard about that, but headless commerce basically is a very technical term in e-commerce, where you have the commerce engine and then you have various front ends. And when I mean front end, it could be mobile, it could be a mobile app, it could be a website. So you have front end developers designing various interfaces. It could be a touch screen, it could be a touch screen kiosk, screen. It could be even Messenger, but your commerce engine, which could be BigCommerce or Salesforce, is just at that core, which is doing all the transactions, your mid-tier and your back end. But your front end could be anything really, any interface. So most software as a service, or most cloud hosted e-commerce platforms are adopting a headless or decoupled architecture, where the base, where they have a commerce engine, and then they have a very, very flexible front end, and that doesn't restrict a Magento front end designer. You could then have people code in XML or whatever language they want in the front end, and that would look beautiful, and it would just integrate with the commerce engine via an API. So that's that's a big, that's one thing. Those are technologies you should be aware of. So if you're thinking about replatforming, definitely go headless and start to think about new channels you can market. Start to experiment, especially things like Messenger, WhatsApp. They would not necessarily explode in 2020, but